What's up, Edders? Today we're talking about this.
So this one, I think this one's probably my favorite one. And the reason why is because I feel like I essentially got into a mini dogfight with a UAP. A pulsating sensation of like, look at us, look at me, like look at this thing. It wasn't trying to be a camouflage at all.
About how big was it?
I would say probably 50 feet tall, like 40 to 50 feet tall. Like it wasn't small.
So you don't feel threatened by it? You don't feel whatever these things are, they're necessarily a threat?
No, because I think with this type of advanced technology, if they wanted to blow your fighter jet out of the sky, they would have done it long ago. I think there's something different here. There's something way better that we can take from this than a threat.
All right, betters, please hit that like button. That really helps out the videos. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. All right, so what's today's video about? Well, it's about a YouTuber named Max Afterburner, who is also a former fighter pilot. And he went on Weaponized to tell 5 amazing UAP encounter stories that he had. And it was an awesome episode, I have to admit. I was pretty giddy. This is me after I saw the episode. You gotta do is say yes. Now, when you hear these kind of stories, they kind of get you excited, right? Because there is a lot of BS in this community, for sure. But every once in a while, somebody comes along who seems very, very credible and is just saying what they saw. They're just telling you the experience they had. They're not trying to shove anything down your throat. And that was Max Afterburner. Now, on his channel, which you can see right here, he actually made a video before talking about his encounters months ago, but he only told 2 of them. So he came on Weaponized and told all these other different stories that I hadn't heard before. So this is a very exciting episode. We're going to go through a few of his encounters and some other context that I found to kind of, put in there as well, as we always do here on Vetted. And now I'm going to let Max here explain a little bit more about who he is.
My name's Ryan, Max Afterburner channel. For those of you who haven't been here before, I'm a former F-15E combat fighter pilot, F-16 Thunderbird pilot, and I haven't made a video about UAP experiences yet on my channel. And the reason why is because, well, I've been focused on other things, but also there has been a bit of a stigma for fighter pilots that have come forward and talked about these things. But obviously recently, over the last few years, I feel like that stigma has been removed. And now I'm ready to talk about it. I'm ready to tell you what I've seen specifically with 2 different encounters. I wish I had footage of this. I don't. So sorry about that.
And so it makes sense that Max has felt a little, stigma before from wanting to come out and talk about this, because some of his sightings go back to like the early 2010s before, when he was flying. And he does talk about how there was a lot of other pilots who have seen things as well. And, just feels weird to come out and say something. And honestly, can totally see that. So to give us a little more background on Max's sort of credibility, which I think is really important that you understand who this guy is. This isn't just some, Cessna pilot or some tour guide pilot. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but this is a fighter pilot with a lot of experience.
So I started out flying the F-15E. I went through Air Force pilot training. I got the F-15E, which is a 2-seat combat aircraft, and I flew that in combat. I flew over 70 combat missions. It was incredible. I would do it all over again. It was a wild way to live. It was a wild time. But I got to fly close air support on 70 different combat missions. And then I've flown some of the fastest jets in the world and the most maneuverable jets in the world, the F-16, and I flew precision stunts in the F-16 for roughly 3 years, 2 show season years, and then getting trained and then instructing. So last 6 months on the Thunderbirds, you're an instructor. So that's when I left the Air Force and moved into the Air Force Reserves.
So I think it goes without saying that this guy's credibility is, at the top. And when he compares it to like all of his other flights that he did and other combat missions he had, these UAP encounters stand out more than anything. I mean, listen to this.
And yeah, I'll say I've flown in combat. I've flown in air shows all around the world. And still, these 2 flights are some of the most memorable flights I've ever had. So between the combat missions, the low levels, flying at 600 knots, 100 feet off the ground, I still remember these 2 UFO or UAP encounters just like it was yesterday. And I think that might be the case for a lot of fighter pilots. When you see something weird, something odd, there's something that's so different about seeing a UAP. It's so different from what we've studied. I spent hours and hours of my life sitting in vaults, studying the different threats I might see, the different missiles that might be shot at me, the ways that aerial combat would be enacted on me from Russia, China, around the world, thinking about these other nations' militaries that would go up against me. But I never thought about a UAP, what that would look like, what that mission would feel like. So during the encounters, it's definitely wild to just remember like a photographic memory. Like I feel like I don't have a photographic memory when it comes to most things, but when it comes to these missions and these 2 particular encounters, I feel like I can remember them with extreme detail.
So that's very interesting, and that makes sense that these encounters would stick with him for so long. Now, I will say that the clips I just showed you are from his own channel. Okay, so I'm gonna put a link down below to that so you can go watch that, because he gives more details that he doesn't give in Weaponized here. And again, there's more stories that he tells in this Weaponized episode.
Diving deep into all these wild UFO stories and eyewitness accounts. I spend a ton of time researching, editing episodes, and just freaking out over all the crazy UFO stories I hear. And I want to go visit some of these famous UFO sites in person. But a while back, I had this epiphany staring at my bank statement, where I realized I was paying for a bunch of subscriptions I barely used anymore. Stuff I'd signed up for ages ago and totally forgot about. It was like uncovering a hidden cover-up in my own finances. That's when I started using Rocket Money. And honestly, it's been a game changer ever since. The app scans all my linked accounts, finds those unwanted subscriptions in one place, and lets me handle cancellations right there with just a few taps, saving me time and stopping those sneaky charges. And the automated savings feature, it's set it and forget it. So I can finally go visit some of these UFO sites in person. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Who doesn't want that? Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/vetted. That's rocketmoney.com/vetted. rocketmoney.com/VETTED. Or just use the link in the description as well.
All right, so here's one encounter that Max Afterburner tells Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp on the Weaponized Podcast.
So this one, I think this one's probably my favorite one. And the reason why is because I feel like I essentially got into a mini dogfight with a UAP, and I'll never forget it. I mean, what we were doing was we were coming back. This is when I was actually on the Thunderbirds. And we'd come back for a Thunderbird pitch, where you come in, you're 400 or so feet above the ground, and you're in tight formation, and everybody pitches sequentially and then lands. So this was at Nels. This was right by George's house here. And so we're coming back in, and I'm looking at the boss who I stay in formation position with, and then something catches my eye, and all of a sudden what I see is the only way I can describe it is a triangle-shaped fighter-looking UAP. And the reason why I say fighter is because this thing just looked like it was built for speed. I mean, if you look at the difference between a commercial airliner versus an F-15, it's obvious which one's built for speed, right? So this one had like a diamond or a triangle shape with the front of it kind of looking like a copperhead snake. It looks very aggressive, and it had what looked to me to be some sort of welding marks on it, and it reminded me of the same look of a Cybertruck. Now that I've seen that Cybertrucks, I'm like, oh yeah, that reminds me of the UAP I saw. So almost like an unfinished paint job on this thing. But yeah, triangle, and it came past me, dusted me off, and that's a move that we actually use in dogfights, is a dust off, where you do a merge and you get really close. If you're in combat, you want to rattle the other pilot. That's the goal before you get into a merge with them, to make them make a mistake. And so that's what I felt like. I was like, that son of a bitch just dusted me off. It was like right next to my jet, probably, if I had to guess, 700 or so knots of closure, maybe more. No sign of a cockpit. If I had to guess the size of it, I would say maybe the size of a lawnmower, maybe a little bit bigger than a lawnmower, like a smaller type object. But it definitely had what looked to me to be some sort of maneuverability.
So a mini dogfight with the UAP. Okay, that caught my attention, I'm not gonna lie. And that's what prompted me to make this video. And as the more I dug in, I realized, I really gotta make a video. This guy is super credible. He's telling these stories exactly, how they happened to him. And he's very particular about the words he uses and how he describes everything. And again, when you come across so much BS, it's really refreshing to hear stories like this, because there are a lot of credible UAP reports, especially from pilots with a lot of experience that, in my opinion, we cannot just easily dismiss. And remember, Max Afterburner's channel, this is not what he covers at all, okay? So that makes it even more credible and tangible to me, to be honest with you. So in his video that Max Afterburner released on his own channel, he also spoke about this particular incident. And he had some other things to say that he didn't include in this Weaponized podcast, like this.
But it definitely got my adrenaline spiked, and I immediately thought, did anyone else see that? But the F-16, you're in a single jet cockpit and everyone else is looking ahead except for the boss, and that is the leader of the formation. And after we landed, I asked him, I said, hey, did you see anything weird when we were on final, coming in to do the pitch? And he didn't see anything. So again, another situation, as fighter pilots, where if you're in a single seat jet, you can kind of feel like, did I imagine that? But I can remember it as clear as day, some sort of an object that was a triangle shape, and it wasn't fighter jet size. It was definitely smaller.
So that's interesting. I mean, you are going to see something like that and then wonder, okay, am I crazy? Am I the only one that saw that? Or are there people seeing this? Right? Which is a normal reaction. And turns out the one person who potentially could have seen this didn't see anything. Now, granted, they could have also just been paying attention to the tremendous amount of, concentration it takes to do the type of flying that he was doing with the Thunderbirds, right? So, that could be it as well. But it is very interesting, and nonetheless a data point that should be pointed out. Now, I will also say, he's flying over near Area 51 in Las Vegas, and specifically near George Knapp's house, coincidentally, which is hilarious.
For those of you who don't know, the Thunderbirds practice relatively close to Area 51. We practice out in the Nellis airspace. It's outside of Las Vegas, and there's lots of crazy stuff that's been reported out there. But this was interesting because it happened once we got closer back into base.
There's a video that just recently got released talking about a triangle-shaped craft. Not exactly what he described, Max Afterburner, but pretty close. Check this out.
After a couple of hours of not seeing much more than contrails in the distance, closer to 3 o'clock in the morning, I got another low flyover, but this one looked different. The aircraft that passed overhead this time appeared to be closer to an equilateral triangle shape with a flatter trailing edge. Immediately, my mind goes back to a pair of photos captured in 2014, appearing to show an as yet unacknowledged triangle-shaped aircraft. One in Wichita, Kansas, taken by photographer Jeff Templin, and another in Amarillo, Texas, taken by photographer Steve Douglas. I had also been made aware of more recent witness accounts of Dorito-shaped aircraft spotted in remote areas of Southern California, particularly Death Valley. Given the limited resolution, we can't definitively rule out a B-2 or other more conventional blended wing aircraft pitched at an odd angle to potentially result in the appearance of a flat trailing edge, as has been discussed in relation to the Amarillo, Texas sighting, with some asserting that those photos simply show B-2s. So are we looking at a classified test flight or a run-of-the-mill training sortie?
So that's interesting, right? Again, this is a guy not covering UFOs, this Uncanny Expeditions YouTube channel, who goes out and records these different planes that are flying around Area 51, the Nevada test range, and, you know, spots this triangle thing that's like super interesting because he has other craft and he can tell what it is, but this one he's like, not too sure what this is, right? So I find that very interesting, and this is exactly where Max is flying as well. But at the same time, and Max would probably agree here, we do have things that look like this, right? Check out this video from Northrop Grumman.
And we've always been on the forefront of innovation. When the world called for speed. When the world called for stealth. Intelligence. Endurance. Affordability. Adaptability. And when the world asked for the future. Staying ahead in a constantly evolving world. That's the value of performance. Northrop Grumman.
And shout out to the Paranormal Chris on X for pointing that out to me. This particular, type of technology that's out there. We have to be aware of that as well. That we do have technology that has shapes of things that we spot. So could those, planes or ships be responsible for things we've seen and different sightings people have had? Absolutely. 100%. Now, does that mean all of them? Not at all. Especially the more you hear Max talk about it, he can tell the difference between things. And one other thing that Max said in this interview with Jeremy and George, aside from his sightings, connected to one of his sightings, was that he has seen something similar to the Gimbal video, the famous Gimbal video that got released, okay? So they're talking about basically the platforms on these planes and the screens that they look at, right? Thermal imaging, all of that sort of stuff, and kind of what they could see and how that works and all that stuff. And they get into this very interesting conversation. So let me play the clip and then we'll come back on the other end.
So you have these multi-function displays in your cockpit. And so you just, while you can see it, it's appearing on your screen all the time. But then as you kind of fly the fighter jet around the airspace, like this camera, it can't look through metal. And so if the actual jet itself, gets in between the visuals, then it'll just break contact and you can't see it. But yeah, it'll be on your screen the whole time. And you can flip through those screens. You can see the screen that the weapons system operator in the back is using, or you can be on something else. So it's super, really great user interface in those fighter jets to be able to see that.
And so the weapons system operators, when they're back there tracking things and you're flipping through, you can see exactly what they're seeing. So you're looking at like thermal imagery if they're taking thermal imagery. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so you've probably seen out of these thousands and thousands of hours of flight time, and also when you're flying on your own, compared to having a backseater, you've probably seen a lot of this type of footage before, right?
I think was it Graves, the F-18 pilot, who came forward with some footage, like Tic Tac type footage.
Commander Underwood filmed the Tic Tac UFO footage, and then there have been other pilots that have brought stuff forward through Ryan Graves. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember seeing that, and I think there was a video where I think it was the backseater in the F-18, their Navy F-18s, saying like this thing's going against the wind or something like that. So I remember I've seen that footage, and it just kind of cued in my brain like, oh yeah, I've seen that before.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm leading. A question here is that George and I have some other footage we'd love to show you at some point, maybe not today, but just, we're trying to determine if you're seeing a sphere or like an orb. People like to just throw out this debunk. Well, these are, birds or balloons. And I'm just wondering, when you go in and you look, you're actually out there flying these missions. I mean, it's not typical for a Wizzo to lock onto a bird, right? I mean, they've all told me it's not. In your experience.
Yeah, that's not a normal thing. I don't think I ever saw that, unless it was a massive bird. Unless there's a pterodactyl out there, I don't think we're going to see them lock onto a bird.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, happy to look at it after this for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And what's also interesting is that Jeremy and George have a video they want to play him. So that's interesting. Are they going to be releasing a new video sometime soon? That's what I think. Right. And they want to get his opinion on it. But regardless, him saying that, he's kind of giving credibility to Ryan Graves, first of all, but also the people that filmed some of these famous UAP videos that got released, right? There was the Gimbal video, okay? It was filmed in 2015 aboard the USS Roosevelt, and it's the one where they're like, look at this thing, there's a drone, there's a whole fleet of them, remember that video? And he's basically saying that, he's seen that, right? Oh yeah, going against the wind. Oh yeah, I've seen those things. I don't know, that's pretty interesting if you ask me. So again, let's take a look at that Gimbal video just to refresh our memories.
Dude, this is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing. It's rotating.
Yeah, that's the one that everyone kind of freaked out about, right? And just very interesting. Just found that super interesting in the interview. He's like, oh yeah, sort of adding credence to what these pilots also saw, right? So again, just found that interesting. Now, let's get to some more sightings that Max Afterburner saw.
I guess I'll start there with what was kind of the most similar to a Tic Tac that I saw. This was in 2010 to 2012-ish timeframe, actually, so right before I was preparing to deploy. We were doing a lot of operations off the east coast of the U.S., so it's called the whiskey areas out there. They're a MOA, so there's ships and things operating below you, commerce is happening below you, but you're up there and you typically it's like you own like 1,000 feet above the water, sometimes surface up to like 60,000 feet. So you own like all that airspace, which is great for training, right? You can do all kinds of different situations, defensive counter air, offensive counter air, strategic strike, like all this stuff. But typically, I mean, it was happening almost every sortie where at the end of it, you've completed your training mission, you've done your big air war. And then on the way out, the weapons systems operator in the back has, this amazing, we call it like a Gucci technology, which just means fancy. It's a targeting pod that, you can just see amazing things. I can't give the exact numbers on what you can see with it. Let's just, for the sake of this, it's amazing what you can actually see with this thing. But on the way out of the airspace, for almost every sortie, we would see these little orbs, and to me they looked like a sphere, but not, maybe half the size of a car is what I would estimate, based on some of the ranging that you can see in that targeting pod. And then a lot of times they'd be, going with the wind or going opposite direction of the wind. It seems like the wind didn't really matter for the flight path of these things. And the weapon systems operator in the back, would just queue these up and try to track it. And sometimes it was hard to track because we were far away or the object was a little too small. So when I started to see, I think it was... there were some other sightings off the East Coast. I started to see some pilots come forward, and I thought, well, yeah, we've seen these a lot. So that's just something that I think was a normal thing for us, where we were just like, yep, it's more of these orbs. And then we would think that, hey, maybe these were launching from ships, like they were small drones, because there's tons of big container ships or oil tanker type ships below us. So we kind of just wrote it off as that. But that was kind of my first experience.
Again, adding more credence to Ryan Graves and a lot of these pilots that had come out saying, yeah, we saw these things like every day, all the time out there, right? On the East Coast. And I don't know, just again, very interesting. And Max is a super credible guy. And how many more pilots are out there that don't have YouTube channels, that aren't front facing, right? They just took regular jobs or doing whatever, just, not public figures, if you will, who have these stories. So, God, you know what? There should be a National Press Club event, just like James Fox put on for the Varhinia thing. There should be a National Press Club event with just pilots. Just pilots. Fighter pilots coming up saying what they saw. That's what needs to happen. Strength in numbers with that. I think that would be super interesting. And some of y'all may be saying, Patrick, put that on. What? Do you realize, how complicated that would be. This is a video of me trying to put that together.
Yep, we've got the count going.
Yeah, exactly. I would be in a noodle. But, you know, who knows? I don't know. Brainstorm, put it out there. Maybe I talk to some other people because that would be super interesting. Or Ryan Graves should do this, right? He should be heading this up and put together some sort of event like that. He's the one that would be the best at that. So anyway, let's move on to this next sighting, because this is probably my favorite one, just in the sense of what he describes. It's absolutely bonkers, and I've never heard anything like it.
And then as this thing starts getting closer, I bump the pilot next to me and I'm like, hey, look at that. And he's like, whoa. And even prior to that, I had started to make out what looked to me to be like a pulsing square. So it was almost like a perfectly shaped square and bright white around the edges. And then it kind of went into a cream color towards the center and then just clear in the center. You could basically like see through it.
I mean, what the F? What? I mean, this is insane. Guy, this is a normal, level-headed fighter pilot describing something that absolutely seems out of this world. Almost like a portal in the sky, right? But, wow, what a story. I tell you, see, I can be amazed by this stuff, but the moment I smell BS, I get lost in the sauce. But when I think something's credible, man, I'm just as excited and passionate about this stuff as a lot of you, right? Especially once I pass that threshold of, okay, I think this is kind of credible, right? Like, and this guy seems extremely credible. I mean, he's probably the most credible, you know, UAP witness I've ever heard. Definitely top ones, right? And when I hear stories like this, I mean, my mind is just like, I just go back to the I Want to Believe poster from the X-Files, right? Like, takes me back to my youth when I was just really into this stuff, you know, essentially. Yeah, fascinating. And it doesn't stop there.
I told Jeremy this. It was in my mind. I've played some video games in my day, and it reminded me of like Mario Brothers. Like, hey, go through here to go to the next level. Like, that's what it seemed like to me, was like a pulsating sensation of like, look at us, look at me, like, look at this thing. It wasn't trying to be a camouflage at all.
Okay, these images are just absolutely bonkers, right? Take a look at these right here. I mean, what? Now, granted, these are AI generated versions of what he saw, but this is what he imagined. Imagine seeing something like this in the sky. I mean, what? And he wasn't the only one that saw it, right? Just crazy.
About how big was it?
I would say probably 50 feet tall, like 40 to 50 feet tall. Like, it wasn't small.
I mean, this thing is huge, right? This thing is massive, y'all. And what's interesting is him telling the story about having to report it and how unusual that process is. But they did do it, and there is a record of this, so it can be done. But you'll see kind of the chess game around it.
Came right next to us. I could see the outline, the square, and then gone. It didn't look like it was moving very fast because the line of sight wasn't like a breakneck speed, kind of like the fighter size UAP that I told you about, but just more of a calm, steady, whoop, there it goes. And so after that, when you see anything weird, you have to make a call to ATC, to air traffic control. And so guess who was the lucky one to do that? Yeah. And that pilot, the pilot next to me, he didn't want to talk too much about it after that day. Just that's the feeling I got from him. But he said, "Hey, we need to call air traffic control and make a pilot report. So good luck." So yeah, I call air traffic control. And air traffic control, they need to report an anomalous object. Here's what it looked like to me. It was a square with pulsing edges, bright white. Can you mark this location for other traffic behind us? And there was other traffic on the radio at the time, and so air traffic control goes, copy, thanks. But then they asked some clarifying questions too. They were like, can you tell us the color again? So they took it seriously, but they also were shocked too, which I understand. I mean, that's normal. You don't get these types of PIREPs very often. PIREP stands for pilot report. And then I heard a few other aircraft on the same frequency speak up and say, all right, we'll keep an eye out, things like that. And everybody's just kind of like, And we didn't hear anything the next couple days. There was a little report that we did file just through some things that we needed to do, but there wasn't any report of anyone else seeing it.
So anyway, that particular story is just so fascinating to me. Again, especially coming from someone so credible as Ryan, aka Max Afterburner. All right, now Jeremy and George, especially George, ask a very good question at the end, well, in the middle of this interview, and I found Ryan's answer to be fascinating. A theory about who or what these beings are, or these things are, what the phenomena is, that I've never heard before. And that's really unusual in this field because I've heard it all. Now, granted, it's a little nationalistic or patriotic in a sense, but definitely an answer that, again, I've never heard before.
Do you allow yourself to speculate what all these things are, where they're from, what's going on up there?
Yeah, I think recently I have. So after I made the video, I kind of popped the top off, just, hey, I'm just going to be honest about what I saw, tell my story, let everybody else decide for themselves. So, I can go down some, are you guys okay if I go down some deep rabbit holes here?
Yeah.
Okay. I think with all this UAP stuff, I mean, we've seen there's like the jellyfish UAP, there's UAPs that have been seen in combat zones that have been, struck with a hellfire, and not a lot has happened. So I'm constantly, asking myself, why would we be seeing this? What's the point? And I think there's one thing that continuously comes up for me. And to me, it seems like if our military, you fast forward us a couple thousand years in the future, the technologies that we have, is there a way for us to get that technology back to us today to prevent some wild, terrible situation from happening? We're talking nuclear war, something like that. If my military brain was fast forwarded 2,000 years into the future and I could do that, and I could get it to, what I see as the good guys, I see the U.S. military as the greatest force for good on the planet. People can argue with that, or, it's not perfect. It's not what I'm saying, but I think we are the greatest force for good on the planet. If you just look at history. So if I was in the future and I could get that technology back into the right hands, why not? I would try to get it to the U.S. military, or at least get it into the brains of U.S. military decision makers, innovators, so that we could start to develop things that, who knows, maybe this technology leads to some sort of deterrence for a nuclear war, down the road. That's something that I think the U.S. military giving a gift to its past self to be more effective is plausible. And I think, to me, that's what makes sense a lot of times. That's not the only theory I have, but that's kind of one of the main ones that I've come to.
So you don't feel threatened by it? You don't feel whatever these things are, they're necessarily a threat?
No, because I think with this type of advanced technology, if they wanted to blow your fighter jet out of the sky, they would have done it long ago. I think there's something different here. There's something way, way better that we can take from this than a threat.
So, absolutely fascinating. One, he doesn't think they're a threat, which I kind of agree with. But at the same time, until you're 100% sure of that, you kind of have to be a little defensive and kind of assume they're a threat to some extent. But regardless, he's the fighting expert, not me. He's got Art of War there behind him, right? The book. But his theory on who they are, right? They could be, us from the future, Americans from the future coming to give us stuff, or just beings, trying to give us, Americans this technology because we're the most good fighting force on the planet, so they want us to have it, right? So it either could be Americans in the future or humans in the future who have decided America during this time is the best people to have this technology, and or just these NHI who decide Americans are the best. Again, very patriotic and nationalistic from an American perspective. But, with that said, allegedly a lot of countries have these craft and have gotten these crafts. So not too sure about that, right? That they're not doing a good job, right? If that's the case, because this is a global thing, right? And the more you get out and see and study, you realize every country has a lore, a history going back, and whatever country you're in, you probably only know a few from other countries, but it's everywhere, and it goes back a long time. So, you know, I don't really buy into that theory, unfortunately, but again, it was a unique one that I hadn't heard before, that's for sure. So, look, I want to say shout out to Max Afterburner, Ryan, for just a very cohesive, level-headed testimony about things that he's seen in the sky that he can't explain, and just thought he was very reasonable about it. And we need more credible people like that to come forward and talk about these things. That's where we get some credibility, not the guy who's like, I was cloned and I went on secret space missions to Mars for 20 years. You know, what the, just craziness, right? People who change their stories, or this, that, all kinds of nonsense. We need guys like this coming forward. That's what gets me excited. So this was actually a fun video to make, something I can get behind. We're not saying anything in particular. He's not claiming anything crazy. He's just telling you what you saw. You make up your own mind. We need more like that. So shout out to George and Jeremy for having Max Afterburner on and talking about this. And I look forward to any things that they work on together. And maybe George and Jeremy do have a new video coming out soon, and Max may be helping with that. But regardless, phenomenal, loved it. And let's see if Ryan Graves wants to put together this National Press Club event with just pilots coming out talking about these things, right? Just like these kind of stories. Let's go, y'all. All right, we'll see you guys on the next one. Remember about us, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.
Hey Patrick, I just watched your video about Trump releasing this information about UFO disclosure in 2026. I actually have the same feeling, and it has nothing to do with an insider telling me anything, just following the line of events going on. And as a Bible-believing Christian, I believe that prophecy tells us this is going to happen. When you read Revelation 16, 13 and 14, it talks about how 3 frogs, 3 unclean spirits like frogs are going to unite the militaries of the world in a battle against the coming of Christ. And so why would Trump announce disclosure during a time of, more significant things to talk about, like wars and stuff? I think it's because it's all part of the agenda. It's all part of the plan to announce these cosmic saviors that are going to bring about peace in a time of such great calamity. So it lines up perfect with what I see happening, and something to look into, man. Hope you keep an open mind and check it out. Thanks for what you're doing, bro. Bye.